Hello and welcome to the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast. I'm Emma, a mama of 2 girls, an ex-nursery practitioner and the creator of the Non-Perfect Parents Club. The Non-Perfect Parents Club is all about support, honesty, truths, acknowledging that none of us can be perfect parents because it's impossible, and basically just speaking the unspoken. The only rule here is no judgment allowed. I love hearing people's stories. I love finding out about other parents, their family dynamics, their values and how they tick. So that is what this podcast is going to be. Some great honest conversations about parenting, hopefully delving into some nitty-gritty thoughts and feelings that will make us all laugh, cry and sigh a big sigh of relief. This episode is brought to you in collaboration with Amazing Grays, who create Grays boxes and party food for the Lancaster and Morecambe and surrounding areas. I can vouch for how delicious their Grays tables are after they provided the most beautiful one for my recent podcast celebration. Head across to Facebook, search Amazing Grays and give them a like. Hello and welcome back to the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast. One of the main reasons I ask the questions that I ask on this series is to highlight how differently we all parent. For ages now, I've wanted to highlight how this can also be the case within families, how 2 parents from the same family can have very different parenting styles. So today I am joined by my first couple on the podcast, husband and wife, Jake and Emma, to hear their answers and see if this is the case for them. Hello both of you and welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, thank you for having us.
So if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your family dynamic and any heritage.
So I'm Emma. I'm 33 years old. I first became a mum when I was 21. So I was kind of the younger age, I suppose, to be a mum. And then most recently became a mum again when I was 31. So a bit of an age difference.
And I'm Jake. I'm 35 years old. And I we were both young. I was 23 when we first had Imogen in my final year of university. And we're
a fairly normal couple.
Yeah.
So you say. Forget I know yet. No, I'm joking. Did you feel young? Because we always have this conversation, like what were we, 23 and 24? And at the time we didn't feel young, but now looking back, that's my dog barking with the fireworks. God's sake.
It's bonfire night, everyone. Nearly.
Looking back, we were like really young.
Yeah. I think the same as you at the time. I didn't feel young. Mm-hmm. I don't think it affected me in any way, other than maybe at the time I didn't realise it affected me. I think I was trying to please a lot.
Okay.
Maybe to make up for the fact that I was younger.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit unaware that I was doing that a lot. 'Cause things like, like now I'll buy off vintage, like just as an example, I'll buy like second hand because why not, But then I was so against it when people said, oh, have a look at this, Emma, you could have a look on this website or whatever and you can get really good stuff. And I just thought, no, I can't do that. I've got to buy new for. I've got to show that I can do this and I like prove a point.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I wasn't fully conscious of it, but now when I look back, I am a little bit. And then becoming a mum again with Freddie at 31, I noticed the difference. So, I didn't feel young at the time, but now when I look back, it's different.
I think I'm sort of the same, but obviously because I was at university.
Yeah, the dynamic was different.
Slightly different in that I was obviously approached a couple of years older than you, but I think we, where I was at that stage in my life, because we weren't together long at all, were we? Literally a matter of 2 or 3 months. So it was all out. It was all.
So for context, Imogen's about to be 12 next week, and we've been together for how many years? 12 years.
So yeah, it was all new. The relationship was new.
Yeah.
It was still that sort of young love. It was kind of, early part of your 20s. And so obviously I had a lot of focus on trying to graduate. My dad was ill.
Yeah.
My dad had cancer at the time. We found out he had cancer only a few months after we found out you were pregnant with Imogen. So there was a lot going on at that time. And it was a bit of a shock. But I think being the people we are, we very quickly learned to
Get on with it.
get on with it,
Yeah.
grow, adapt, accept, because we're responsible people. We just took the bull by the horns and got on with it. And whereas some people might not do, we might find it hard to adjust. There's a lot of questions. No, we had questions. We just you find your way, don't you?
Yeah, there's no
Find your
doubt
feet.
it was hard, but
Yeah,
but we got on with it, didn't we?
we did. Yeah, had no choice. So
No.
yeah.
The main rule of the Non-Perfect Parents Club is no judgment allowed. Have you ever felt judged in your parenting, and can you tell us about it?
So Imogen, our eldest, she's had quite a lot of behavioural difficulties, hasn't she, over the years, to kind of put it in layman's terms, I guess. Basically to the point now where we're going through the process of she's being referred for assessment for autism. So she's very much a typical girl that masks, autistic masking. So like on the surface functions really well, does really well, but sensory needs and everything else like that is just a bit of a minefield. So in terms of our parenting, like the traditional, I think you'll agree with this, won't you, like the traditional parenting styles that we would have naturally come to did never work with her ever, even from being really, really little.
The styles we were used to with our parents,
probably from the way we were parented.
Implement that.
No, so we used to live down south in Kent, all our family from up here in Lancashire, and then when we lived down there we had no family around us, so no like breathing space really from Imogen. You know, like you kind of, I think sometimes you feel guilty saying that as a parent. You need a breather.
Yeah, you definitely do.
But we did, and we really did, because quite a lot of Imogen's behaviours were really intense at home. She functioned on the surface very well at nursery and then primary school, but actually when she came home that all then came to a head because she wasn't really functioning under the surface. So her behaviours were really challenging, and it was hard because our family only really saw that in snippets when they would come down and visit or if we came back up to visit. So feeling judged is like a full honest view sometimes by our own family, because the way they would have done it didn't work with her. So that traditional style of parenting that they thought, well, you should be doing this, it didn't work. So then we kind of came to loggerheads with a few members of family, which wasn't nice, and have no hard feelings for any family. Like, we have really close family, don't we? Really supportive family, but there were moments where it was tricky. It was really difficult. And I think school as well, that was hard, wasn't it?
School was certainly, although we didn't openly, well, obviously as this was an emerging part of Imogen, as it started to grow and grow, to the extent it started to spill over into school. And not it didn't demonstrate it within school, but there would be a hangover from the morning from when she'd have an episode and she would be late, or we're out of duty of care. We have to inform school that there's been this happening at home. It could affect her ability to concentrate in school. So we have to notify. We had to notify the school, didn't we?
Yeah, a meltdown would go on like well into early hours in the morning. So she was shattered.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we were all tired, so we felt we have to speak to school about it. So countless times we were in for either a meeting that had been arranged, or we just asked to speak to the head in the morning in a more informal manner. But you always got, they didn't, because there was no diagnosis. But they did acknowledge that these things happen, but they didn't see it with Imogen. There was no diagnosis, so they were kind of just thought we were kind of exaggerating. They didn't necessarily. You could say they weren't taking us seriously. I was trying to read between the lines, and
there was more emphasis.
It was always downplayed, wasn't it? There was emphasis on us, and they did what they could within their arsenal, which was like, a bit of paper, or go and see this. She'll go with you, sit outside the lesson for a little bit and do a little bit of work with her support teacher.
Like on emotions and stuff like that.
And I get it
short-lived
to a degree, but because they weren't set up for Imogen's case. But at the end of the day, it was all very sort of brushed to side, and especially in the latter end of that the final year she was in school down there, where be pretty much just
Yeah, so that's more
try
specific.
to pass us off, but I suppose that's a different thing.
I think,
isn't it?
because she moved primary schools when we moved back up here,
Yeah.
so she was 9 then.
Yeah.
Year 5 she went into, and even although they tried to be really supportive, even there was judgmental comments and things like even just questions like, well, what have you done to help yourselves? What have you done? What have you accessed? And I remember one meeting, like, I got really emotional, but it was I was so angry because part of me thought, how dare you question me? How dare you question me as if I haven't? Because it wasn't sort of it didn't feel like a question like, well, I just want to know so that I can maybe point you in the right direction if you haven't looked into X, Y, and Z. It really didn't feel like a, well, hang on, a bit of an interrogation. Well, what have you done to help yourself? Have you actually tried to help yourself or tried to help Imogen? And just kind of, it just felt, I was taken aback by it really, because I could list off, I could sit here now and list off a reel of different agencies, courses, professionals, charities, all these different doors we've knocked on for help and advice. And so to have that like judgmental question and sort of, it was, there's been quite a few areas like that, hasn't there? That's, and like you said earlier, didn't you? Like judgment is part of life. So you can be judged good or bad. But I think in our experience,
we judge people all the time. In your head, so you make judgments. That's how you determine maybe you do or don't do something, or you talk to someone you don't, or you like someone or you don't. But when it comes to parenting, it's a bit of pill to swallow, isn't it? When you it's felt a little bit more negative. You're trying your hardest. Well, most people try the hardest.
Yeah. But when we feel we've tried our best, like, and that's all you can do as a parent is try your best and do what you can and what you know. Yeah. So it feels like a bit of a kick in the teeth when you get questioned constantly.
Yeah, and especially by people that are meant to support you as well, aren't they? Like school, especially, you're meant to work together, aren't you? And you know.
Yeah, it should feel like a partnership. And
there's fact finding, isn't there? Because you have to ask questions, but then it's a manner in which it's done. Yeah. And then if things are dismissed or, it's... we've come a long way, but we're not quite there yet.
We've still got a long way to go for her. Yeah. I think that's kind of like emphasis on Imogen, really. And Freddie's 2.5, so there hasn't... he's a toddler. We haven't really experienced any of that side of it with Freddie. Yeah. He's just more been with Imogen, but I think it's because of what we've been through with her. It's made it that little bit trickier, hasn't it? Yeah.
And so how was that, like when you first started noticing things and stuff, how was that in terms of like you two parenting? Like, did you have similar parenting styles anyway, or were they quite different, or did you ever like...
There is differences, isn't? But we're on overall we're on the same page, aren't we?
Yeah, now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's sometimes it takes something like what we've experienced to sort of expose your strengths and your weaknesses, and certainly there's situations where Emma's probably handled it better than me. And there's other times when I've handled it better than Emma. Yeah. And we try to improve. We try to take, be mindful of how we always kind of, it sounds a bit informal, but we always try to talk about what's happened and understand it, don't we? Like we'll play, we'll like replay it through. Yeah. I don't mean we sit down and go, all right, now come on, let's have a chat about this, and take some. It's not like that.
In a meeting.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. But you know how it is when you're trying to take stock of everything that's happened. Yeah. Because it can be overwhelming. You try to feel like you're in control, but you're dealing with something. I say it's not unprecedented now, but in the early stages, as it was growing and changing, and things become more physical.
Yeah, we had to really change our expectations, didn't we? And that was I found that the hardest bit.
We did, yeah.
Like totally reevaluating what our expectations of her were when she hit like total overwhelm, overstimulation, and then just couldn't really function, and she couldn't really compute, could she? She wouldn't, like, makes her sound stupid. I don't mean to make it sound stupid, but you're trying to give her instructions, just as simple as, can you do this? And she'd just fly off the handle, because she just didn't want that interaction or communication anymore. She just wanted it to stop. So she would automatically go from 0 to 100, and often then out, like, kind of defence mechanism for yourself, because she could get physical, just went from 0 to 100 as well, and kind of trying to help her and expect her to be able to come down quite quickly. It just very quickly we had to realise that that wasn't going to happen. And again, going back to those, like, traditional parenting methods, it, you know, like a bit of time out or anything like that, none of it worked with her, because she almost needed that, like, physical security. She didn't want you to touch her.
No.
She didn't really want you to.
She wanted a presence.
She needed your presence to feel safe. But at the same time, she could still be quite verbally abusive and aggressive, because she's still all kind of coming out of her, and she's trying to regulate it all. So, like, your kind of natural, as a parent, naturally, or not as a parent, as a human, your natural instinct is, I want to get away from this. I don't want to be anywhere near this. But the more we would try and take ourselves away to get space in between us, she would follow. So we really had to change our expectations, and I found that really, really hard, because ultimately I knew what she was capable of, but that's only when she's completely regulated and in that understanding, regulated state, really, isn't it?
And, so was that hard to kind of stay on the same page in them situations? Like, I know from, like, me and my husband, when stuff happens, like with the girls and that, sometimes we have to do the same thing. Like, afterwards we have to kind of, you know, have a chat and say, oh, we should have handled that differently. And but in that moment when stuff's happening, because we've got different opinions, it can be really hard, even though we know afterwards we understand each other. It's hard to stay on the same page.
It can be really hard. The times there have been a few times where we've come to loggerheads, like,
you've been, naturally, you've been, as a woman, you might have had more of a nurturing, sympathetic approach, and Imogen has needed that, because ultimately you've been able to see through Imogen, say, when she's lost control, but you know she needs a hug, as an example. You know that you need to demonstrate that's what she needs, regardless of all the show and that's going on. Whereas I know that now, but I would never have seen that. I would have been, you know, tough. You're staying in there, and that is it, and you're not coming out.
And that's kind of what you conditioned, I feel, to how you're meant to parent, isn't it? Like, coming from the kind of era that we do, that's
discipline.
It's you do not let them behave like that. Get up to your room type thing, isn't it? But, you know, it's not always the way, is it? Like, it doesn't work like that.
No, she can't. She's never been able to, from a really early age, she was never able to take herself away, like, allow herself to take herself away. So,
that's
like,
very
being really, really
difficult,
little, like when they're 2-3 years old, and they need to start to learn the boundaries. And there's so many different ways of doing it. So many different people have different methods of, like heard of the spot to help give them a space to sit on the spot and think about it. Some people still use the naughty step, or just the step, not necessarily the naughty step. And I see the difference now for Freddie. If he needs a little bit of time out, it's very, very rare, because he's a good little boy, isn't he?
He's a good little boy.
He's I know he's hours, but he is good. But there are occasions where he has to, like, he'll start shouting or something.
He's just testing the boundaries.
So we'll give him his chances, and then I'll say to him, right, you need to come and sit on the step, like, really calm with him. Come and sit on the step. You have a few minutes, wait there, and Mummy will come back. And probably after a couple of times, I think it is, because he's still so little, it's a bit of a game, but he will sit there and he'll wait. Imogen has never been able to do that, and that's not me comparing them two. It's just comparing that. Well, not comparing, but she's just never been able to give herself the space. She's always needed me or Jake or an adult, a familiar adult that she feels secure with, to regulate herself with. She couldn't ever do it on her own.
And I think when you've got another child, it highlights stuff that you didn't, because when you've just got the one, you don't know any different.
Exactly.
To that, do you?
Suddenly
But then
now
when
I'm
there's
going,
another
hang on,
child-
Imogen, this is something else that
Yeah.
Imogen just wasn't able to cope with
Yeah.
at the time. And I don't like saying like she couldn't do it,
No.
because that makes her sound as if I'm kind of putting her down, and I'm not.
Yeah.
Must be.
She just needed that extra
Factual,
support to be
yeah.
able to
Yeah.
get through that emotion, whatever it might have been,
Yeah.
whether it be like anger, frustration, sadness, or whatever. But I think there are times where we come to loggerheads, but we do.
Yeah.
We
All the time.
we have a meeting at the end and make our notes. Crack on.
Take correct
Yeah.
some minutes
Yeah.
afterwards.
Distribute.
Sign off.
Yeah.
How do you feel about parenting? Good, bad? Has it changed you? Do you have any regrets?
I think we've touched on this, haven't we, just now? But
Yeah, a little bit.
I think on the whole, it's good. It always it is. It is life changing because it changes you. You grow. You grow. You take more responsibility. Your outlook on life changes because it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's more selfless role.
I
think
think
you may come first, and then you kind of pick up after with what's left in terms of time and money and the rest of it.
I think it's more again, like going back to having Imogen so young. It's more recent years that I've kind of started to realise that we have to give ourselves a break every now and then. I love being a mum. It's the best feeling in the world. But you can still say that, and you can still continue that sentence with, but it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. It's draining. It's tiring. Mm-hmm. It's an emotional roller coaster, and sometimes it's okay to say, I need a break. Like I do classes with, as you know, with mums and dads. And dads come and babies, and we have this conversation quite often. And it comes up because you get little conversations coming up, and some of the mums will say, "Oh, I don't mean to sound awful," or but you know, sometimes you just do need a break, don't you? And everybody starts off the same, and I always say, like, don't feel bad for it. Yeah. It's okay. You know, I've had a conversation with a parent who had fertility challenges to have their little ones, and she had a little one, and then another one came along very quickly after, and she was saying how blessed she was, and but at the same time, she needs to be able to say, it does have its challenges. Like we have an amazing life, but it is still really challenging. I've got 2 under 2, and it's really, really hard. And you know, we're having this conversation recently, and I said it, but that's okay. You can love parenthood and find it really challenging at the same time. I mean, I don't think we'd be doing ourselves justice if we didn't mention Florrie, because Florrie is ours, a little girl who, unfortunately, like you know, Emma was stillborn. She would be coming up 5 in January. And that changed things massively, didn't it? I think the way you feel as a parent, more protective. Yeah. I think you're always protective of your own children to a degree. It's very natural. But then after having Florrie, and I remember having Florrie, and a few days later taking Imogen to school, and quite a few parents stopping me on the way up to school saying, Emma, I can take him in for you. You were with me, weren't you? We were together taking her in. And that worried about me, and I just said that I'm still her mum. Yeah. I am her mummy too, and she needs me. And I think I had even more of that protection feeling for her, that I had to be there for her. I'm her mum. I've got to help her with this. So I think that changed it definitely. Like it didn't change in any way how much like I enjoyed being a mum, but it just changed that, I don't know, diet that's like an extra layer of emotion around being a mum, and then having Freddie after having Florrie, and that again, like whole protective mum mode. And I think you're the same, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
It possibly a little more protective and a little bit more.
And I always kind of think, like, as a mum, when you're pregnant anyway, you're so focused on the baby being all right that you don't think about I didn't think about anyway, like for the dad, that he's not just got the baby, there's the mum as well, and that it's like a whole extra load, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like when you were pregnant with Freddie, that was probably the most anxious because I don't think I feel like I personally talk about. So I don't feel like I suffer with anxiety or get over emotional or any of that. So I try to regulate.
Yeah.
But when it came to his pregnancy with Freddie, obviously the third pregnancy and after Florrie, I must admit I could feel the worry and the sort of the stress of it because I worried about, obviously we lost Florrie, but also it was directly affecting you, your body, and your mental well-being. So yeah, you're right. It was like a double.
Yeah, and I think we were at the time really consciously aware of Imogen too. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. I can't forget
the
trying to make sure that she was okay through the whole.
It's like you say, you always put your children first, don't you?
Yeah.
So in that situation, there's not just you, but there's Imogen as well.
Florrie was stillborn at 41 weeks and plus 5. Yeah. So Imogen was 7. And she was fully aware of the fact that she should have been having a baby sister coming home and everything. So by the time we were then having Freddie, she used to ask us, didn't she? So I'm going to definitely have a baby home this time, and we couldn't answer it. We couldn't give her the answer that you want to give them. We wanted to be able to say yes, we will, and we had to be really open and honest with her. So, but in the right way. There was a lot of research that we had to do, wasn't there, and a lot of extra help from like bereavement midwives and even like school to help to keep her feeling as secure as possible and to keep the worry at well, not at a minimum because it was never going to be gone, but as manageable as it could be. So, like for you, there was me, Freddie, who I was pregnant with, and Imogen. So it was definitely.
I imagine that's a lot of pressure as well, isn't it? Like, especially like you tend to find that guys don't, like you said, don't really show their emotions and they don't kind of talk about stuff. And like I said before, when you're a mum, you're just focusing on, you're not even thinking about yourself really. No, you're just focused on your children. Yeah. But then, I guess in situations where like dad's involved, it's a lot of pressure to carry.
Yeah, it is.
I think you're good though in that you're quite open.
I will be. I'll try to be as honest as I can be. Sometimes you're conscious if you're too honest, it sounds like you're just offloading everything. And I don't want to be that type of person. I think that, if I'm when I say I'm not emotionally like void.
No, I didn't mean that.
But you know what I mean. If say we've say Florrie, what happened, we'll share that. I'll express how upset I was at home. Not outside the house necessarily, whereas some people might be more happy to do that and have deeper conversations and with other people. Obviously that's not me necessarily, but
no, but I meant at home, like together you would openly talk to me,
absolutely,
and vice versa, like in terms of that side of it within our relationship and parenting, like the whole general aspect of it all, like we're both very open with one another, which is obviously helps massively.
Is there anything in your life that has shaped how you parent that you're happy to talk about? Any situations or circumstances that have affected this?
So I think it goes back to some of the experiences we've probably already talked about. Like, obviously losing a child, that massively changes how you parent and the way your outlook on parenting and stuff, doesn't it? And then again, the experience we've had with Imogen and everything not quite being as you would necessarily do it with a neurotypical normal child, neurotypical normal child, it's all very different. So it changes your approach completely. And I think we've had to change that approach because there's such a lack of support out there within children's services. It's almost non-existent at the minute, and it's letting them down. So as parents, you've got to step up again even more, trying to help your child, support them, find the right support for them, so that we can support them in the right way. So that's definitely influenced.
And again, that's a whole extra load on top of just being a parent anyway, isn't it? Like, all that stuff.
I remember going through a period where, like we said, didn't we? We constantly felt like one of us was on the phone ringing somebody, whether it be in like a charity-based service or a service that we'd been given a number for, like, try these, they might be able to help you, or paediatricians who were kind of leading the ASD referral and things like that. We were constantly on the phone to people as well. So that took its toll, because there was another extra layer of stress. We were both working full time. Imogen's at school. You were running a house.
Track of that is a nightmare. Emma was a lot better at that than me, because you were making a lot of calls, weren't you?
But I mean, I suppose I wouldn't say I was better at it than you. I think it was more that...
I mean, in terms of understanding this very complex, overly complex system, where there's no, knowing who you've spoken to, when, where's a dead end, who you need to engage. It's just there's no clear process.
This, Emma, maybe, but it's hard sometimes when you're talking to people about it, like we're talking about it now. It's really hard to give the full picture of it,
to convey how much is involved.
How much goes into it. With a child that's struggling, or for want of a better word. How that then changes the way you're parenting, how it changes your whole life dynamic, because she doesn't physically need physical aids or at home or anything like that. She's not physically disabled. There's nothing like that. But because I think sometimes a physical disability is easier to see and maybe look at how, and rightly so, like how that would impact your life and take its toll on your life. But for a child that's struggling with some kind of additional need, that it's not easy to see on the surface as an outsider. It's really, really hard as parents to convey how difficult that is. But I think, just going back to you saying that I took kind of the lead on making all these calls and trying to manage all these calls and stuff, I think partly that falls into a mum role, and not like, that's not to say you couldn't do it, because you could do it. If I'd have said, look,
a few occasions,
if I'd have said, look, I need you to take charge on this, you would have done. But I think as a mum, you take it on when there's mum and dad there. I think I don't know. I think as a mum, you feel that responsibility to, okay, this is my role. I've got to do this. I've got to take lead on this.
And did you find, obviously knowing your background in like as a nursery practitioner, did you find it maybe because of that knowledge you had there that it kind of...
A little bit, maybe,
It was a bit. It was kind of an extension of that kind of childcare. Generally, obviously, there's lots of offshoots from that. But you had some. It lent itself to your understanding of the system anyway.
Because in the later years, I was working as a Senko,
right,
and then working
closely.
You
had that experience, didn't you, to a degree?
I worked closely with specialist teachers in Maidstone in Kent, where we lived, and I was very lucky actually. I got to do a lot of work with some really brilliant people that work for the different services that they offer down there. It's like some of the speech and language therapists, some of the specialist teachers, some of the inclusion team, and they were really helpful in me learning how it all worked and then being able to support the children that were in my care. But actually it really helped when it came to trying to get that support in for Imogen. So that definitely, I mean, as a parent, as a mum, gave me a bit of a boost that I when I'm having these conversations with these professionals on the phone, I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I used to say, didn't I, if I didn't know
This is
how
what I
some
can
of this
say,
worked as a professional and how you can kind of what wording sometimes needs to be used.
Even sometimes the terminology can
Yeah.
make a massive difference,
Yeah.
can't it?
Then what hope in hell have some of these other parents got that don't know that? And why would they know that unless you work in that area?
So you got to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Haven't you?
And I just
Very specific.
I mean, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent here, but I just think there's such a massive failing for so many families. It's the children and the parents, because the parents are trying to do their best. I just think it's diabolical.
Yeah, it
and
is.
that in itself is going to change the way people are parenting for these children that need extra support, because there's nothing out there for them.
No.
And I mean, that's a whole different story.
Well,
It
Probably
leads
another
on to
conversation, but
funding that's available and where money's allocated, and
that's a
and
whole
it's
other
hard to get your head
conversation.
around in a country like this, a developed Western nation, and you can't even support mental health well-being of children.
No.
Without waiting 2 years on a bloody list.
It was during COVID, wasn't
what is
it?
that about?
That really came to a head with Imogen, was her mental well-being and her mental health. It was really, really bad.
It did peak, didn't it, at one point?
Yeah, it was probably at its peak during 2020. So obviously there's kind of
21.
Into 21. There's obvious reasons for that you could see,
and
some people did just jump to the, oh well, you've lost a child, that will impact Imogen. It's during COVID, but we kind of had to keep reminding people that, hang on a minute, this has been going on since she was tiny. This has never stopped. We've come to a real peak. But we were devastated. We'd hear her saying things like, I don't want to be here anymore, after she'd had a meltdown, because she just couldn't stand the way she'd behaved, or some of the things she'd said during the meltdowns that it would appear she can't control. And it was devastating, wasn't it? And not to be unable to find the right help, or to know how to best help your child to feel better about themselves. I mean, let's face it, during COVID it was almost impossible to get any service on board to help. I think we were offered some video calls for her with people, but she was not in the right frame of mind for doing stuff like that.
No, I mean, she'd mask, wouldn't she, within that call? Yeah. And just tell them what she thinks they wanted to hear.
She knew exactly what they wanted to hear.
Didn't give any,
she's so clever. Away. It was hard, and I just, I mean, it goes back again to, I just really can sympathise and empathise with so many families that struggle, and it would appear that there are more and more finding a voice now to try and help them be the best parents that they can be for their children. Luckily for us, we found some friends on our journey who have girls of similar age to Imogen who have the same kind of struggles as well, don't they? So that's been helpful to us. Kind of throwing ideas around together and what's worked for them, what's worked for us, and trying to support one another as parents.
What is your biggest value when it comes to parenting?
Well,
you can lead this one.
Well, I think there's a lot of things we hold dear, and that we sort of like to say we value, and dictates of our life, virtues and things like that we hold dear. But I think for us, I was going to say trust, because I know it could come across a bit of a cliche, but it's true. It's because it's true, and it underpins everything. So we obviously the dynamic between me and Emma, she trusts me and I trust her. We trust our children to a degree, but in terms of
wanting them to trust us as well.
Yeah, in different ways. Like I trust Emma with my life, or with anything, and vice versa. And obviously, your children put that trust in you. You know, and that goes to telling the truth, being transparent, and so you can get through, especially in certain situations that we're in, because you need to be. It needs to be open so you can.
I think from a really early, really early on in our relationship, we came to that understanding together, probably without even actually talking about it, that trust, like you just said then, it underpins all of it.
Yeah.
Without it, it's nothing, is there?
No. And we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? And I was saying that we don't go to church anymore. We used to go to church a lot, didn't we? We'd bring an Imogen up.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
As a family, we went to church, and so this is when we were living down south. We don't go to church anymore. That's a whole other story. But when we were down south, we coincidentally, the church we went to, the minister, he was from up north. He was from Preston,
really?
just close to where my dad lives.
Right.
So we had like quite a nice relationship with him, didn't we? He used to make reference to yeah, it was really nice. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going off tangent again. So on a tangent, so he said it was his sermon one day was based on trust, which was like, which was really good, quite relevant to obviously what we're talking about now. And he said, and it's always stuck with me, to rely upon someone totally, that's trust. And I just thought, you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah. That is totally what, like, our whole family dynamic, our relationship as a married couple, it's all based upon. That's what we've always said, and it is. You're relying upon someone wholly and completely, whether it be me as Imogen's mum, whether it be me as Jake's wife, or, again, like me trusting Imogen, or me trusting, Freddie's only 2, but it, it all comes into it. So it's always been the biggest one for us, hasn't it? Kind of underpins everything else.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe because, like with you saying that you obviously hadn't been together long before you got pregnant with Imogen, I guess you probably got thrown into that trust thing straight away, because obviously it's one thing starting a relationship, isn't it? But then when you're having a baby, at the start of a relationship, you've got to trust each other.
And you were at uni. Yeah, and it's not, and like, this isn't even just like going back to the start of everything when we were younger and we had Imogen young. It's not even just like the trust, because you kind of think, well, at that point, oh yeah, you had to trust one another as a, that you're both being trustworthy away from one another. But actually, it was more than that, because you were at uni. But it was trusting that, again, sounds a bit cliche, but you used to say, didn't you, like, this will work. Like, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to say, God, that's not going to work. It's not going to last very long. They've become parents really quickly. And
did you find that?
A couple of times, Not too much. I think I probably ignored a lot of it, but I had it said a few times.
I'll never say it to my face. But imagine it would have been slightly different for you, especially when I wasn't there for.
I think it's different for a woman.
6-7
as a
months
girl, or
often.
a woman at the time, 21, a young woman. It was. I think the trust that. So things like us talking about like this will work. Knowing we knew what kind of relationship we had. I knew what kind of person you were. I knew how hardworking you were, and you saying, "Trust me, this is going to work. I will finish my degree. I will do, whatever you said, we've done. Whatever we've said to one another that we'll achieve, we've done it. Yeah, and that's all been based upon trust in each other that it is going to work. Whatever we're saying we're going to do, we can do it together.
Your dad's an ex-copper, so I couldn't. I had to.
No pressure there then.
I just said it to get us. No.
And also,
but he knows because he held me to account. It came up in a wedding speech. In his wedding speech, didn't he? Yeah, he did. He said, "I'm a man of my word." I was like, "Yeah, probably because you got too many contacts."
Well, what was the first time you met my dad? Dave hadn't even met my dad before I fell pregnant with Imogen.
Oh, your mum?
Oh yeah, my mum.
No.
No, you had. You had met my mum. You definitely
Once,
had met my mum.
possibly.
Right, once is better than nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely hadn't met my dad, and we were sat around the tea table, weren't we? And he said, right, what did he say? What was the phrase he used?
I'm not going to kill you or something.
Yeah, you can stop shitting yourself now. I'm not going to kill you.
Yeah.
So how did that
right,
feel?
actually.
Like, how did that feel when you got pregnant and all that?
What with
like
telling the family and this
just,
new
unplanned
situation.
I'm not going to lie, I was shitting myself.
Yeah.
Is that right to say that?
Yes, Jeremy's fine, don't worry.
yeah, it was just,
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it really. I haven't thought about it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was really nervous to talk to my mum and dad. My mum knew instantly that something wasn't right, because I was still living with my mum at the time. She could tell something wasn't quite right, so she managed to get it out of me. Because you just, you don't plan that conversation, do you? How do you have that conversation? So, and she was really good. And then I went and talked to my dad, and again, like, could not have. I don't know what I expected really. I don't think I had any expectation from them.
Yeah.
But my dad was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of my dad's sisters said to my dad, "It'll be the making of Emma."
Mm-hmm.
So hearing things like that was what I needed. Was really lovely. My sister was fantastic. Like, my sister's been amazing throughout.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the first people I told.
Yeah.
And she helped us a lot, didn't she?
Yeah.
Your mum and dad were fantastic.
Yeah.
You were most worried about telling your dad, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't know why. Well, I probably, if I need to give it some thought, but because I'm a lot like him, because there was never any option.
Mm-hmm.
He would never have said, "Oh, well, you need to go and get an abortion."
Yeah.
He would never have said that, because
Yeah.
I know it, and he was very family orientated, man of principle, which I like to think I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I have to, So, and he said, "Well, you just got to look after your family now."
Yeah,
You've
he
got to
always
go.
said that, didn't he?
Yeah.
He, I think for me, it was one of the things I didn't ever expect, like you saying, I didn't ever expect that my mum and dad would turn around and say, well, like, here's your options kind of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't ever think that. I think it was almost in the back of my mind, well, right, like them being almost disappointed in me.
Yeah.
Or ashamed even
that
I'd become pregnant so young and I'd not been in a relationship very long with Jake, and it was probably more that side of it that I was worried about, because you kind of think, well, what was I worried about? What were they going to do? They're not going to. But I think it was that. It was more.
Well, yeah, the thing is, my mum and dad are a bit, I say, older. My mum had me when she was 38, and I'm 35 now. She's like in her 70s, and my dad was like 40, 41. So they're obviously of an older generation. If they had children younger then, she had my brother when she was 19. So you're only comparing yourself to like societal norms. To what everyone now tends to, because everything now is about getting an education and going out into the bigger world, getting a career. That's for men and women, but now it's more pushed on women. It's pushed on women heavily, and naturally, you're happy, we're happy, and you've still managed to pursue a career and a job at the same time. It wasn't one or the other necessarily.
No, it just changes the direction.
It changes direction and
that you do things in,
how you manage it, and you.
And the order of that you do things, this is like is just different, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just all got our own journeys, haven't we? Our own.
Yeah, I mean, I know plenty of women now who are my age, that even some family that have had babies really young and have fantastic careers now. It didn't stop them from then, after having the baby, pursuing things like university and degrees and everything. It's not. I think that whole thing of, well, it's ruined your life.
It's down
I think
to the
that's
individual,
starting
isn't it?
I'm hoping it's starting to disappear a bit. And that it changed it. Yeah, that it would change it. Now, if you ask me how I would feel like, imagine having a baby at 21, then I would probably totally contradict myself.
No, I know.
It's stupid, isn't it?
But it is, but that's the lead up. That's a strange thing, isn't it? Because you wouldn't. I say you wouldn't like it. You want them to be happy and healthy first and foremost, and you don't want the father to bugger off. They've got to step up, and you've got to be a family. That's been my only concern. Is that going to be a lasting family unit? That would be the main focus.
And I think that's a normal, understandable thing to be worried about, and probably our parents thought.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. Obviously women, perhaps they generally have children younger, 30, 40 years ago. Got married a lot younger. Which we didn't do for another 7 or so years, did we? So we didn't rush into that necessarily. But we always kind of knew that's where it was going to lead. Yeah.
What has been your biggest challenge so far?
I don't know if there's one challenge.
No, I think they've overlapped a little bit, haven't they?
There's a lot of overlaps. We're still in a challenge trying to with our eldest daughter in terms of daily challenges to with her personally and then with the system. So that's a continuing thing. Obviously, being away from home for a lot of years, you could say it was a challenge at times.
I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges overall.
To move 300 miles away, with a baby, being with each other just over a year.
I've always said I don't ever regret that. I mean, between the two of us, I think I found that harder, didn't I, when we first moved? Yeah. And I'd never lived away from home before. You'd been at uni for 5 years away from home. I'd never been away from home before, so then suddenly moving 300 miles away from anybody that you know is really daunting. And I think it took me a good 18 months to 2 years to actually feel settled. But not having any family around to give you a break every now and then. And I mean, we've made fantastic friends down there, friends for life. They're more like, some of them are more like family now than friends, but there's still that they're not your family. So although they're amazing, and we had to rely on them a lot, especially when we were pregnant with Freddie and we needed to go to appointments and stuff, and it was COVID, so it couldn't take Imogen to appointments, so stuff like that. We had no choice but to rely on them, and they were fantastic, but you still couldn't help but feel like you were putting on people that maybe you shouldn't be putting on because they weren't family. Kind of, I think, like now we're back up here, kind of feel a sense of relief sometimes that, I've got my mum or my dad or your mum or my sister or somebody who's a family member, and you don't feel like you're putting on them as much because normally they want to. They seem quite happy to anyway. So I think that was a massive challenge down there, not having them around and not having people on our doorstep that we could rely on more or feel more comfortable to rely on. We did have people we could rely on, but it's that feeling of being comfortable to put on them people and rely on them people. That was a big challenge. Imogen was only 1.5 when we moved down there. So that's become down there to her it's her home, which is lovely. So that's why I would say we'll never regret it, because we have some fabulous memories down there. That's where our family dynamic blossomed, really, isn't it? So it'll always be part of our home, but it was a huge challenge, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. You can keep focus on, down there primarily with my career, so it was, trying to focus on that and obviously making sure the other main part of your life, the two main things you're all about, your family and your job, are all, working as well as it can be.
And we still managed
it was very challenging.
We still managed to make sure that
definitely.
Imogen had a relationship with everybody, didn't we? Like, we'd come back up here and visit. Our parents or family members had come down and visit as much as they could, and we'd video call and so we did as much as we could, and it definitely never impacted her relationship with her family, did it?
No, it didn't.
That was one of my worries, that how hard is this going to be to, she's 1.5, they're at an age where, it sounds awful, but they could easily forget about people, can't they? If you don't keep that contact with them. But that never happened. She was never shy or reserved when family came to visit, and she was always like they lived around the corner, really, which was really lovely.
I think it's that comes back to what we were saying about when we had him, we knew you just have to not get on with it like it was just like paying your taxes. But I mean, like, that's our mindset. We just there's no point going on about it. You got to do it. In the back of your mind, you have to do it. So just do it. And the same, there's a lot of challenges, but we knew we have to keep going, and we did, and we have.
And it worked for us when we were down there, didn't we? Yeah. And we moved back because it was the right time to come back. Yeah. Because we never said, when we lived down there, we never said that it was forever and that we would never come back up here. Right.
But you have to give it enough time, don't you, to at least prove to yourself that you've managed to, do it.
We were down there for close to 9 years.
Yeah.
And And I think it was just the challenges we faced with Imogen, COVID, lockdowns, having and losing Florrie, then having Freddie, that we just felt like actually this is the time now. And obviously it all worked. It appeared it was going to work with your job to be able to move back, but actually still retain the job you had. And it has worked, but it kind of, we just took that opportunity then, didn't we, and decided it was the right time to come back, so we did. Yeah, but there's no regrets on it. There's I definitely don't regret it.
I can't think of any regrets, really. I suppose that's a good thing, isn't it? You know, or something bad's happened, an experience, you learn from it and try as best you can to try and learn and grow, rather than just dwelling on it as it was bad. Try and turn a negative into a positive. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It's the only way you can positively reframe something.
If you're talking about regrets
move
as a
on
whole,
from it.
I think there's a...
Oh no, don't. I've said we haven't got any regrets.
Hang on a second.
Where are we going with this?
Stop that right there.
Just 1 second. No, I just mean like on a whole, I think there's little bits and pieces over the years that I look back and I think, I don't know if it's a regret though, like some ways of dealing with Imogen's behaviours and because we're all human and react to situations, like getting cross as a mum, where you're shouting and I hate that, and I kind of to a point do regret stuff like that, but then at the same time I'm human, and I suppose again, like, got to give yourself a break sometimes.
You've got to work on yourself as much as the other person, haven't you?
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, this is the thing. Some things you just got to accept things, and you know,
you
can dent your ego.
You
think, oh God, no, I need to be like that. That's not. But you got to.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if it's a regret or just more of a, well, like you were saying, that I've learned from it. We've learned from all these different ways that we've had to, of parenting and trying different things to make things work within our family and for Imogen. And yes, perhaps it's not a regret. Maybe it's just more of a, I've learned through it all, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you wish you could change about parenting in general, as in for everyone?
I think for me it's the whole judgment thing, which I love about what you do, Emma, because I just, it's support that's needed, not the judgment, and there's not enough support out there as a parent. If I could change that single-handedly, I would, but there's never going to be able to do it single-handedly. And I think I think there has been a slight change. I think people are better at being less judgmental, because there are so many different factors to why people parent differently. So many different reasons, whether it be because the child has additional needs, or whether they've been brought differently, whether they're not biologically from that family, that you know, from an outside looking in to a family that you don't know, you know, thinking about, I don't know, passing judgment on somebody in the street who's maybe just raised their voice at the child. You don't know how long that parent's been suffering. Say suffering, that sounds awful, but kind of trying to get through that challenge with that child, and then you get a judgmental look from another parent. It's not helpful. It's never going to be helpful. If I could change that, I would. I think that's the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I think I don't want to focus on parenting styles, I suppose, because I don't really. But there's obviously, ultimately, you just want the children who you parent, whether you're from a working class or an upper class, a middle class, all to have, should be, but there is, if you get out into the world and talk to people, you can get along with people from any walk of life, really, because there's a common thread within society that is instilling the morals, you know, virtues, principles in children, how you conduct yourself, and that should be the backbone of it. And I suppose how you get that to that point can differ. I suppose it can differ with how parents, I don't know, depending on their background, but
I mean,
you can't judge someone for the background. It's really got to be ultimately on who they are. So
I know you notice when you're about with friends and stuff, you notice how different you all parent. There are similarities and there's always differences, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that one of you's doing it better than the other.
No.
Well, some parents are very similar in a lot of respects, and then they're different in others.
Our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but we're still on the same page. I suppose that's where I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
You know, styles can be different, but ultimately we're being positive. On us.
It doesn't
and we're
mean,
here today, and we're talking on the same.
other,
So, you know, you'd never have known that. You must have thought we'd come out exactly the same exact mould. But you don't, do you? You just... No. So, there's nuance. It's nuance, isn't it? There's lots of little... Yeah. But, yeah, I think we're finding you can't just, like your time was saying, you can, in the back, in your head, without, to yourself, you can create a profile, like an outfit of a family, and you kind of stereotype, you know, really. But the kids might turn out okay. You don't know unless you delve into the detail.
Everyone makes a judgment. Everybody makes judgments, but unless you try to understand who you're judging, you're never gonna kind of know what that actually is about. You know, you've kind of got to. I tend to find with a lot of parents that a lot of judgment is insecurity. Yeah. Because it's that you can kind of pinpoint that they're making that judgment because that's their insecurity, and then the other thing tends to be understanding. There's just a lack of understanding, and people can be so kind of tunnel focused, and this is what you do, and this, and there's not that. And not always, but I think that can sometimes be a generational thing, can't it? Yeah. About being accepting of differences and things like that. And I get not always generational, but sometimes it's passed on a little bit from one generation to another. But
it's their exposure as well to things beyond that family unit. You know, we're in a more interconnected world, so you get to like it or not. I mean, I'm not for modernity. I'm like old fashioned, but I don't. But I still. I'm grateful for our access to information. And people. If you want to find something out, there's an entire network of information of our parents perhaps didn't have. And I don't mean that they can't learn or jump on the internet and look at something up, but it's instilled in you now, isn't it, to be a bit more open-minded,
accepting.
And you do, you know, there's a saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and it can be true, can't it, for
I think our
some
parents
people. You know, it is, isn't it?
I think our parents have been good though, just going back to our daughter Imogen and her.
Oh, they have.
They've been really good. No, I know.
They've been
really good.
Yeah.
Even I've sent them stuff like links to read up about sensory processing disorder and stuff like that, so they can try and understand that side of things more. And they'll read it and can't, you know, even my mum would be like, oh yeah, I've seen that in an hour. Yeah. That makes sense, you know. So that's they've been good at.
They have.
Helping them understanding, so that the judgmental side of it doesn't kind of come up really.
We have very understanding. We're not exposed to it every day. We still get the brunt of it. But I think when they do see it, then they are aware now.
They've been open, so they're able to manage it rather than consumed by it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to follow, review and share with other parents you know. You can now listen on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts and YouTube. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please get in touch via any of my social media channels, website or email. Thank you, Jake and Emma, for joining me on today's podcast.
Thank you.
Great to have you. And thank you to everyone for listening.